Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well, and welcome to, depending on wherever you may live or however you choose to read your clock, this early morning, middle of the night bonus upload. Before we jump into it, a couple quick links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button. It takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help this channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and they are appreciated. And with that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into this early morning or middle of the night bonus upload, shall we? All right, folks. So back around somewhere between 2010 and 2015, the Dyatlov Path incident was brought to the majority of Americans' attentions, maybe worldwide at that point. I know that it was something very, very rarely talked about until some movie makers or explorers, whatnot, wanted to look into something strange. And it is strange. There's just a mountain of theories surrounding the incident. Well, there's actually a more recent case that is quite similar to the Dyatlov Path incident. Khamar-Daban mountain range in Siberia, there was a group of hikers that all supposedly died of hypothermia, which I'm going to share the incident with you, and it really doesn't make a lot of sense. Yes, they were in Siberia. It was the summer, August, and just a lot of weird things to go about, or a lot of similarities to the Dyatlov Path incident and a lot of differences. 6 hikers, all ranging in age 41 to 15. Just a really strange incident. And it's also known, so Khamar-Daban incident, or it is the Korovina incident. However you look into it, either or, but really very terrifying experience. And it's one that almost was hidden by the Soviet Union or Russia, but very, very interesting and very terrifying. 1993. So let's get into it. So when we think of paranormal, or we hear the word paranormal, what do we think of? Well, we think of poltergeists, ghosts, demons, Ouija boards, demon dogs, hellhounds, UFOs, aliens, cryptids, Bigfoot, Dogman, orbs, strange disappearances, possibly spontaneous combustion, what have you. Strange deaths with no explanation. That's what I think about when I think of the paranormal. anything that leaves me standing there questioning and wanting to know more about why. When I hear the word or words paranormal in the Soviet Union, well, the Dyatlov Pass incident immediately comes to my mind, right? I mean, that incident has probably sent a lot of people down a rabbit hole. I mean, you've got so many theories of what happened to those hikers in 1959. Then you've got the Tunguska incident, which you've got this massive area of land flattened just in an explosion, and no one knows what happened. No one can tell us exactly what happened. There are theories, and I've heard people, possibly asteroid, possibly nuclear testing in Russia, but those two incidents in the Soviet Union, or what is known as the former Soviet Union, overshadow a very similar incident to the Dyatlov Pass incident, but it's fairly recent, 1993. And it has just as much intrigue and mystery surrounding it. Possibly even more. Now, some of the theories about these hikers who perished were possible UFO, possible government, possible natural gas, like the family in California, which now they're saying died of hypothermia, which doesn't make sense either, but that's not for today. Two mountain spirits or mountain what have you. Just because we are in Siberia, the Soviet Union, and it is vast and a lot of it is uninhabited, doesn't mean there were people not there. There's indigenous people that lived there that had their own spirituality, their own beliefs, practicing what we in America call shamanism. And, every country has their own kind of indigenous people who practice light or dark magic, what have you. So that's where the mountain spirits fall into play on this. But the Korovina incident sent me down a rabbit hole. And I want to share it with you. So here it is. Now, before we get into this, I just want to let you guys know I did practice pronouncing some Russian names. So I apologize, first and foremost, if there is any Russian people listening. And if I said anything wrong, please, I'm sorry. I tried my hardest. Let's get into it. The former Soviet Union can be a mysterious place. You've probably heard of the Dyatlov Pass incident, where 9 experienced hikers died mysteriously in the Russian Ural Mountains. The case has been spoken about so many times over the past century, it's really not worth repeating. But there is another very similar case that is not so well known. The Dyatlov incident was not the only mystery to grace the Soviet Siberia. The Khamar-Daban mountain range is in southern Siberia, perched above Lake Baikal. It's a rugged scenery and has made a popular tourist hiking spot. But in 1993, 6 of those tourists would not make it out of the mountains alive. There are few answers in this case, and the lone survivor has refused to talk about the traumatic event. since her first statement to the police in 1993. There are so many pieces to the puzzle of the Corvina incident, many of which may not even be relevant or trustworthy. Here are the tentative facts and theories. Timeline. 41-year-old Ludmila Corvina was an experienced hiking instructor and survivalist, labeled as a master by her peers and students. She was known for her tough love on her students, often pushing them very hard. This tough love ultimately paid off, however, as her students described her as being a good teacher and taught them confidence and crucial hiking skills. In the summer of 1993, Ludmila had planned a hike with 6 of her students to the Khamar-Daban mountain range. She's very experienced in this area, which was a popular tourist spot and considered a very safe place to hike, especially in the summer. Her students had trained with her for this trip, and she was very close to all of them. The first of the 6 and the closest was 23-year-old Alexandra Sasha Krisnan. Ludmila had known Sasha for most of his life and considered him to be almost her son. The other 5 students were 24-year-old Tatiana Filipenko, 19-year-old Denis Shavenkin, 17-year-old Valentina Otachenko, 16-year-old Victoria Zalsova, and 15-year-old Timur Bapnov. On August 2nd, 1993, so the summer of 1993, guys, the group of 7 arrived at the mountain range in the town of Marino, excited for their journey into the mountains. The weather forecast promised them clear, sunny skies. Ludmila and her students were one of 3 hiking groups in the area, one of which was being led by Ludmila's daughter, Natalia. Their 2 groups had plans on meeting up on August 5th, when their hiking routes would cross paths. All of the 6 students were ready to begin their hike, as this was their chance to prove themselves as experienced hikers. This journey was what they had been planning for and anticipating for months now. And as a result, the group had become very close. The first 2 days of the hike went better than planned. The group made extremely good time up the Retranslator Peak, pushing themselves hard. By August 4th, however, as they were beginning their descent, the weather forecast proved to have been wrong, and they were hit with a rainstorm. With the hikers' supplies soaked, their journey was slowed down by the added weight. Since the hikers were exhausted, Ludmila decided to camp out hastily in an exposed location despite there being tree cover not far away. The group was unable to build a fire that night, but were still in good spirits. The next morning, an attempt at building a fire was successful, and they ate breakfast together before heading out for the day. They planned to meet up with Natalia, and expected to be able to do so given how quickly they had made their way up the mountain the previous days. Later that day, Natalia and her group made it to the meeting spot, but her mother never showed. The group moved on. She wasn't worried about her mother, assuming that the bad weather had just set her back. Unfortunately, what had set the group back was much worse than she could ever imagine. On August 10th, a group of kayakers noticed something in the tree line as they were paddling down a river at the base of the Khamar-Daban mountains. A lone girl was standing and looking at them. The kayakers got out of their boats, and when they approached her, some sources claimed she was covered in dried blood. The girl became hysterical, trying to tell the kayakers her story. Eventually, she identified herself as Valentina Otachenko and said that she had been hiking with 6 others. Horrified, the kayakers took Valia to the nearest police station where a report was filed. However, it wasn't until years later that she was slowly able to tell her story of what happened to the other 6. But it was perplexing and terrifying. According to Valia, the group set off down the mountain after eating breakfast that morning. But after only a few minutes, the first disaster struck. Sasha, who was at the back of the group, began to scream. When everyone turned, they saw him bleeding from his eyes and ears, frothing at the mouth. He fell to the ground, convulsing, and then went still. Ludmila ran to him and ordered the rest of the group to continue. She was extremely distraught, trying in vain to get Sasha to regain consciousness. The remaining group did not get far before they heard Ludmila cry out. As they turned and ran to her, they saw she was having the same symptoms as Sasha. Her eyes and nose were pouring blood, and she was frothing at the mouth. She convulsed, then collapsed on top of Sasha. Tatiana, who had gotten to Ludmila first, was the next to collapse, grabbing her throat. As though she couldn't breathe, she slowly crawled over to a nearby rock and bashed her head against it until she went limp. Victoria and Timur both ran while Dennis hid behind a rock. Valia stood unable to move, having just watched 3 of her closest friends seemingly die within only a few minutes. Both Victoria and Timur collapsed while running and died in similar manner, throwing up blood and clawing at their own throats, tearing their clothes off. Realizing they were the only ones left, Valia and Dennis ran to each other and hurried away from the site of their friend's death. It wasn't long, however, before Dennis collapsed convulsing. Scared for her life, Valentina ran and left her friends behind. She only had a tent and the clothes on her back for supplies. Valia ran down the mountain until she was certain she was far away from the tragedy she had just witnessed. Under adequate tree cover, she set up the tent for the night and fell asleep. When she awoke and realized she was still alive, Valia knew immediately that she would need supplies if she was going to survive alone in the wilderness. The problem was that she'd have to return to the site of her friend's death and retrieve them. Knowing she had no other choice, Valia made the trek back up the mountain, retracing her steps. When she reached the site, she saw that none of them had moved from the spots where they had fallen. Knowing they were all deceased, Valia quickly took the supplies she needed from their bodies and left, following power lines. For 4 days, she followed the power lines down the mountain, hoping someone would find her, until she found a river and began to follow it. By the end of the 4th day, she was found by the kayakers and brought to safety. Despite the police report, no official search was conducted until the 24th of August, since Valentina had not been able to recount her version of the events yet. It took 2 days to find the bodies using helicopters. An autopsy report concluded that they all had died of hypothermia except for Ludmila, who had suffered a heart attack. They all had signs of bruised lungs, and protein deficiency due to malnutrition was listed as a contributing factor in their death. The deaths were ultimately ruled to be an accident. Compared to the testimony of Valia, this ruling is strange, and is central to many of the theories in this case. Some of the theories, the mysterious nature of this incident, has rightfully caused many theories to be put forward. As with the strange event, these theories range from aliens to supernatural to actual scientifically valid explanations. These theories all have strengths and weaknesses, and no one in particular fully explains this incident, but some have the potential to get close or even overlap with each other. The hikers saw something they shouldn't have. This theory proposes that perhaps the hikers walked in on some sort of Russian military experiment in the mountains and were killed for what they saw. Their deaths were subsequently covered up by the police and medical examiner. It's true that the group deviated from their usual route through the region, so it's possible that this change of plans led to the group of experimenters that weren't prepared for visitors. Despite this, there are 2 main problems with this theory: the location the hikers died in, and Valentina's survival. The Khamar-Daban mountains are a very public area with multiple groups of tourists traveling through at any given time in the summer. Siberia has many opportunities for secrecy, so it would be strange for a top-secret experiment to be taking place in a public location during tourist season. In addition to this, the particular part of the mountain that the hikers died on was an open area visible from the air and from higher ground. It wouldn't make sense for a top-secret mission worth killing people over to be in this section of the Khamar-Daban Mountains, let alone the Khamar-Daban Mountains themselves. Then there's Valya. Why did she survive? It doesn't seem possible for her to have escaped. Take a look at the geography of the location. There is nowhere to hide or run to. If we were to put this aside and assume that somehow she did survive, then why wasn't she silenced or killed by the military after? If she was forced to lie about what happened, she definitely didn't help calm suspicions about the incident. And if she hadn't been forced to keep the secret, then why was her story so wild? This is the main problem with the military experiment theory. A nerve agent killed the hikers. Many people have pointed out that the symptoms described by Valya are consistent with the death of chemical weaponry, specifically nerve agents. The frothing at the mouth, the convulsions, match the death by a strong nerve agent. This death also matches with the autopsy results. Since contact with nerve agents can cause respiratory distress, the bruising of the lungs can be a sign of death by nerve gas. Cardiac arrest is also caused by nerve agents, which match Ludmila's cause of death. The cause of death of the other hikers could very well be hypothermia, even if they were exposed to nerve toxin, since they could have been knocked unconscious and fallen into a coma, and then ultimately succumb to exposure. One researcher proposes that the specific nerve agent that killed the hikers may have been Novichok gas. Novichok gases are a class of nerve agents created by the Soviet Russia up until 1993, which is the year of the incident. They were thought to be the deadliest nerve agents to exist, being 10 times more deadly than VX and 20 times more deadly than sarin. Novichok agents were reportedly tested in the areas near Khamar-Daban region. Exposure to this gas causes rapid death similar to what the hikers experienced. Both the above theories have issues, though. The first and very common one with all of these is Valentina's survival. She was near most of her friends when they died, and even went back to the location without suffering a similar fate. The second is that if no one was there to release the gas, where did it come from? But here are a little bit of cracks in that theory. Nerve agents are soluble in water. They can take 4 months to evaporate. They are made of heavy particles that often float close to the ground, and the stronger ones can be hazardous in a location where they were used long after they were first released. This may seem completely random, but bear with me. The rainstorm plays a very key part in this. The rain could have washed a strong nerve agent, likely the Novichok or VX, that had been tested at least 4 to 5 months prior in a more discreet place down the hill. As the morning sun evaporated the water from the rainstorm, some of the still hazardous agents went within, but didn't travel far, staying in a sort of epicenter close to the ground. Sasha got unlucky and walked over a highly contaminated spot, causing almost instant symptoms. He may have absorbed the toxin either through his skin or breathing it in. When Ludmila ran to him, she was exposed by the same toxin in the location. Tatiana, Victoria, and Timur were the first to reach Ludmila, but quickly ran away. This delayed their death slightly. Since Valya didn't get close to Ludmila, only Victoria, who had removed herself from the epicenter of contamination, Valya was not exposed to high levels of the toxin. However, if Victoria had not bit her and Valya had bent down to the ground, she may have. Dennis was also not impacted by the high levels initially, but his decision to hide and crouch down was his downfall. Small levels of toxin were floating close to the ground, and he breathed them in. He was exposed to less than the other 5, which is why his death was delayed. But it ultimately caught up to him. Russian police, suspecting that runoff from the test could be cause of the deaths, waited to start their search in order to ensure that the agent had mostly evaporated before sending in a recovery team. But here's the problem with all that, all right? Valia, being set apart from everybody, she wasn't near the epicenter, but it's very unlikely that she didn't get exposed. I mean, we're talking, you are all in the same, distance of each other. We're not talking a very long distance from being apart. So, I mean, it just doesn't fit. It's a good theory, and there could be some validity to it, but I mean, come on. When someone undergoes a traumatic experience, they often misremember aspects of the experience, especially when telling it years after, like Valia did. Certain parts of the story could have been exaggerated by Valia, by no fault of her own. The research surrounding the inaccurate nature of the eyewitness statements are extensive. It's possible that the hikers died exactly how the autopsy report concluded they did. The group succumbed to hypothermia after not being properly sheltered that night, and died together on the mountain. Valia could have survived by her decision to go to the forest, a difference in clothing, or as Valia reported, says herself in regards to her survival, her physical fitness. It should also be added that people who die from hypothermia often experience paradoxical undressing, where they strip off their clothes shortly before death. This would be a valid explanation for the hikers being found partially undressed. This theory can not only stand on its own, but it can also be applied to other theories where there seems to be missing pieces. See, but here's my thing with the hypothermia. All right, we're talking August of 1993. Now, if you research, and I went back and looked up temperature ranges from that area. The low, even with the rain, was like 50. The high was 82, I think. So how are you going to die from hypothermia? You're not. It's impossible to die of hypothermia when the low is 50. It didn't get below 50 degrees at night, even being wet. I mean, that makes absolutely no sense. Contaminated water. This theory also relies on the rainstorm bringing toxins down, but instead it proposes that the hikers drank the toxins in the water. Lake Baikal, which sits above the mountains, is well known for toxic waste dumping. If this waste was washed downstream into the water, the hikers could have accidentally drank deadly toxins with their breakfast. The contaminant could have been one of those water-soluble nerve agents. Valentina may have survived by drinking less or getting her water from a different location than the rest of the group. Most highly toxic substances take a few minutes to take effect, hence the hikers all dying later. Similar to the nerve agent theory, this toxin could have been ingested by the hikers, causing them to die of hypothermia before succumbing to the toxins. Depending on the toxin, it may have not been visible in the standard toxicology report. So that theory is pretty much like this toxin made the group pass out. They died of hypothermia. Once again, you're not going to die of hypothermia in 50-degree weather. It's not possible. And I know for a fact, I mean, if you just sit and think, how many of us have been camping? All right. When I was younger, I was in the Boy Scouts, and I was an explorer, which is an offshoot of the Boy Scouts. I didn't make it to be an Eagle Scout because the Boy Scout troop that I was in dismantled because of some higher up bullcrap with the adults. But I was a Life Scout. I was working on my Eagle. Then I went to the Explorers. So I was technically an Eagle Scout, but not, which really chapped my ass when I was younger. But anyway, we used to camp all the time in the Adirondacks, and we would get soaked and wet. Like, there was a time that our scoutmaster was a badass. This dude was amazing. He was a survivalist. He taught us a lot. He taught us how to shoot. He taught us, how to shoot rifle, how to shoot bow. He taught us how to dress animals. He taught us how to make rope ladders. He taught us how to make shelter, how to start fires without having a lighter or a match. So there were times that, a certain few would go out on these outings, and of course parent permission, that we wouldn't go with a tent. We wouldn't go with anything except a sleeping bag and what our pack could hold. And we were cold, we were wet at times, but we survived. And this is the summer in the mountains of New York, which gets very cold. I mean, right now it's like 18 degrees out. It gets frigid up here. I'm not saying it's 18 degrees out in the summer, but it also isn't 18 degrees in the summer in Siberia. So, no hypothermia. Just doesn't happen. Then there's a theory of eating mushrooms. Now, this one is kind of like, I don't know. Because, here. Ludmilla was a known forager who taught the art to her students. Now, it's possible that one of the hikers found some mushrooms to add to their breakfast, which wasn't to correct variety. After eating their breakfast, the effects of the mushroom poisoning began to take hold as they were walking, causing them to hallucinate, to be sick. Interestingly, a common hallucination caused by psilocybin is to see other people cry blood. Overdoses of psilocybin can cause psychosis, convulsions, cardiac arrest, and some in comas. Once again, it's likely that the hikers died of a result of hypothermia, being in an altered state, whether it was just tripping out or being in a coma. Valentina could have survived by eating less of the mushrooms, having a tolerance, or even just a genetic disposition to being less affected, wearing warmer clothes, or by running to the forest and sheltering out of paranoia. No. Once again, the mention of hypothermia is always pushed. This is being pushed by the government, by the Soviet government, like our government does when they lie to us. I mean, why wouldn't any other country lie to their people? I mean, it's just not our government that's douchey like that. Anyway, Natalia, the daughter, during all of this, when Valia was speaking, Natalia was sitting in years later, and they were doing like this kind of like press conference, not really, but not a press conference, but talking. Supposedly, Natalia was paid a large sum of money to keep her mouth shut about certain things that she had learned. A lot of it doesn't make sense. It's a strange, how did this girl survive? I mean, she was 17 years old. 17. yes, she was experienced in the woods, taught by a master hiker, master survivalist, but she did not survive by anything other than, in my eyes, sheer dumb luck. I don't think that there was poisoning. I don't think anything. I think that something unexplainable happened there. I mean, we're talking about Siberia. This land is vast with so many questions. We don't know. Here's something to think about really quick. So this is a popular hiking destination. Tourists. Why were no other tourists or hikers poisoned by these toxins? Well, how did the police survive? Something happened. I'm not saying it was UFO. I'm not saying what. But it is a mystery. What causes 6 of 7 people to die of all different little facets of death or whatever have you? And honestly, here's another question. Who's to say the autopsy report is right? Huh? Honestly? I mean, we're talking about Russia. The only other corrupt... No. Probably right up there with our government in corruption. And I love America. But gosh, corruption. I don't think the autopsies were right. I don't think they were done or handled correctly. I think something really did something bad to him. There's a crazy movie about the Dyatlov Pass incident. And it's about an experiment gone wrong. And it's almost like a time travel experiment, but there's like a cryptid. The movie is called The Devil's Pass, I believe. And it is one of the freakiest movies I've ever watched in my life. I don't like horror movies because they are lame. There are certain horror movies that I'll watch that actually have, like, I don't know, some sort of validity to them. But, like, I don't like Friday the 13th or Freddy or whatever. But when it comes to, like, historic things with a possible theory attached to it, I honestly suggest to anybody who is into this part of the paranormal, this part of the intrigue and mystery, to watch that movie. Because immediately when I first found out about this incident, I immediately went back and thought about that movie. And I was like, oh my God. The movie will bring you so many questions. And it could be possible. That's the craziest part about it, is this could be possible. I'll leave it to you guys to watch the movie, but I honestly, watch it, please. It's called The Devil's Pass. So, what killed these people? I don't know. But it's a mystery. It's a mystery we may never know. It took this poor woman 20 years, I believe, to even speak about it. Her own husband didn't know what happened. I mean, it's just something very, very bad happened out there. Something unexplainable. What honestly makes this person, go and smash their head off a rock? Why were they all grabbing their throats, frothing, bleeding from the nose and eyes, undressing? That's not hypothermia. That's something evil. That's what it is. It's something evil, man. There's no explanation. And there you have it, folks. I hope you all enjoyed this early morning, middle of the night bonus as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. Thank you for supporting the channel. It is your support that keeps this channel growing and going, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please, everyone, stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and our friends. These creatures are real, they are out there and dangerous. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.